Hello and welcome, I'm DrHamfist, and this is going to be the least formal guide ever. This is going to aim to tell you which class you should be playing in Heroes of Hammerwatch, and this is not going to be in-depth. I'm going to have each class get its own in-depth guide once I actually know enough to produce that. Right now I've basically played mostly the Warlock, so that Warlock guide will be coming soon, but as for the other 6, I'm going to play them more before I try to tell you how to play them, because I have to know how to do it first, right? But I've took them all for a spin, I've beaten the first boss with all of them, and, past that with some of them as well. And I just want to tell you how each of them plays to give you some general idea. Before you get into it, you might have a better understanding of which character you should probably start with then. So, first, the Paladin. This is the melee bruiser of the bunch. He's very tanky. He's got this passive that lets him ignore most projectiles, basically everything but the magic ones. Runs around the map beating things with a stick, and he can heal his allies. So he's great in groups. He's a great tank. He's very beginner friendly. He's a strong pick as far as your first starting class. Next, the Ranger. This guy just got buffed because he was a little bit underpowered. He might still be a little bit on the weak side, but he excels at dealing a ton of damage at range. And he does that just with his primary attack. He doesn't even need to use spells to do that ton of damage. One thing I would say is he's probably a little bit better in groups because he can have somebody else distract the enemies while he stands still and sort of shells them. He deals more damage while standing in place than he does while moving. So you want to sort of get a position and just shell stuff with the Ranger, and he's very good at that. The next one over is the Sorcerer. This is the second of the 2 classes that just got buffed. So Ranger was the other, but then Sorcerer also just got buffed. This one I'd say is not terribly beginner friendly, largely because of the primary attack. It's a bit annoying to hit anything with. It's very precise as far as the aiming required to hit anything with it. The payoff here, he's got this really fun passive where you get this skill called Frost Nova. It shoots out a bunch of icicles all around you. You then get this passive late game called Shatter, where enemies that you kill have a chance of triggering a Frost Nova on their location as they die. And the catch with this is, if an enemy dies and triggers a Frost Nova, and then that Frost Nova kills more enemies, one of those enemies can also trigger another Frost Nova. So if you get a whole big room full of things, sometimes you set off this chain reaction that just kills the entire room instantly, which is super, super awesome. The catch is that that's dependent on killing things, so if you're trying to push this into deep end game, he'll basically go through the first playthrough of the game really well, and then if you beat the final boss, you go into New Game Plus. Each time you go into New Game Plus, everything gets a lot tougher and harder to kill. So he's not going to scale terribly well past the first iteration of the game, but once you get this going, he's really, really good towards the end of your first playthrough. Next up is the Warlock. This is the one I have the most experience with. And the catch with the Warlock is the auto attack is terrible. It's far worse than the Sorcerer's because it's melee. It's called Poisoned Dagger, and it has the shortest range of anything. So you barely use this, but the catch is, early when you don't have many other spells, you kind of have to rely on it. So when you first start as a Warlock, it's really, really rough, and then you're going to get more spells, and it's going to become much better. And I actually think Warlock is in contention for the best class late game, and it's super easy to play. It turns the game on its head. It's almost a Zen game playing the Warlock. You just kind of run away from things, and they die chasing you. But until you sort of round that corner, it's a bit of a nightmare, right? So the next 3, before I show them, spoiler alert, these are unlockable classes. You don't start with these, so if you're trying to avoid spoilers and just, experience the game with fresh eyes, stop, tune out now. I'm going to explain how to unlock these first and then just what they are. So there's 3 unlockable classes. They are the Thief, the Priest, and the Wizard. So the way you unlock them. The Priest is the easiest to unlock. All you need to do is unlock the chapel, or it's the Chapter of Light or something, in town. It's already available to do so, you just need the ore requirement to do it. So it's available from the beginning at the cost of ore. The Thief, you can find on level 2. You have to save him from a locked cell, which uses the level 2, there's a button hidden somewhere in the level to unlock all of the doors on level 2. He'll be hidden behind one of those, sometimes. Not every run. And also, if you're playing in multiplayer, it only matters whether or not the host has found them before. So if the host has found the thief will not appear, and you will not be able to unlock the thief. So if you're new and don't have the thief, and your friend is hosting and they do have the thief, you will not be able to unlock them. But if you host, and then your friend joins your game, you will be able to unlock them. So consider doing that. And then it's essentially the exact same logic for the wizard. Wizard is in Act 3. He's hidden behind a destructible wall rather than locked away. And on both of those two, the thief and wizard, you can unlock them with ore by actually building the building they live in after you do go save them in the dungeon. But as far as how they work, right? So priest, easiest to unlock, so I'll actually cover him first. He's very tanky late game, like borderline paladin tanky, which is interesting because he is sort of ranged, but he's also a really, really short range caster. So he's very much going to be in the thick of things. He has heals. He's a little bit better at healing like his friends than himself, whereas the paladin can just heal everybody. But he's sort of this like caster, like pseudo bruiser, like sort of paladin slanted caster, with a lot of great defensive abilities and decent damage output. So I haven't played him too much, but I think he does look pretty good. Thief is borderline the best class in the game and just got nerfed pretty significantly, but I'm sure is still fine. So I wouldn't sweat it too much. The reason the Thief is so great is because of this last passive, which says, it's called Gold Fever. The Thief gains more gold and does more damage based on your current gold. And that's how much you have on you during the run, right? So if you send back to base, which is how you actually upgrade your base, you have 0 because you sent it all away. So you lose this passive, it goes back to 0, so you do no bonus damage. So what happens is, in order to do more damage, you avoid sending back to base until you've basically given up on the run. So the Thief is very high risk, very high reward, because you have to walk around with all the gold on you and then you die and lose it all, right? So it's possibly not a great first class because of that high risk nature, and you can lose like all of your permanent progress like every time you die. But it also is super snowbally and just builds really well into late game because of that gold passive. And as far as what you're really doing, you mostly kill stuff with the first two abilities, so either the melee attack or basically Fan of Knives. You throw out a large arc of knives and it actually cuts through people and continues past them, so it can deal a ton of damage to large packs. But it's sort of torn on the internet. Half the people want to go pretty much strictly into twin daggers, and the other half say to use throwing knives. The catch is that the Thief doesn't have a great way to replenish the mana, so the throwing knives build is probably better for like farming, but the twin daggers build is probably a lot better for boss runs, right? And for like pushing high level. And then last is the wizard. So the wizard is all about blowing stuff up in a large area. It's very fitting. So the basic attack is this range area of effect damage. You throw it and it explodes. You have this upgrade, this passive here called Combustion, which is any wizard skill inflicts a damage over time effect on enemies, and that includes your first attack. I actually thought that wasn't necessarily terribly clear, because if you read like your primary attack, I think it calls it primary attack, and like everything else says skill, but it does work on the fireball. Your fireball will light things on fire. And then you also later get this Scorched Earth passive, which says even things that come into where I burned after take damage too. And this sort of stacks with the combustion in the first place. So you sort of end up just burning everything, and then everything that you've ever touched takes damage over time and just dies. So he's essentially this huge area of effect damage nuker. And he performs that job very, very well. But that is very much all he does. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So that's the 7 at just a super high level. And so the question of which should you play, the question that has a 3-word answer. So my joke here is that the answer is Warlock, then Thief. Play Warlock early, then go to Thief. That's not necessarily actually correct. The answer here is all of them. And when I say all of them, I do mean you should play all of them, not just to figure out which one you think is best, but the game actually incentivizes you to play all of them. Let me just pop into my character here. And I'm going to pull up should be this button? This button. There we go. The Guild Hall tab. So you can see here, it shows the 7 classes. And then also below each of them, it's showing this little bonus that it's giving me to all of my heroes, right? So this is the Paladin. I have him at rank of Journeyman, which gives me +4 armor to all heroes. And there's a similar bonus under each of these classes here. What's going on here is each time you beat a boss, up until when you beat the game, you get a additional like level of title on that hero. And then after you've beaten the game, it keeps going up, but it's slower. It goes up every time you reach like New Game Plus. So every time you beat the game on the next difficulty. And it's going to help everybody on the account. So the game is actually designed for you to want to make alt characters, and you should play everybody. And if you try somebody and then don't like them and switch off of them, and then find out that later they're more fun and you go back to them, that's fine. And also, when you unlock an upgraded guild hall, the guild hall is what unlocks higher levels of skill, like the actual abilities, like your spells. And certain spells are locked early until you upgrade your guild hall, but there's no strict order where you have to get 4 ranks in skill 1 before you can get skill 3. As long as you have enough skill points and have unlocked the guild hall for skill 3, you can take skill 3. So when you come back to one of these tunes, you might be able to get some of their high level abilities immediately and have a lot of fun doing that with your alt tunes. So you should play everybody and figure out what you like. And if you're anything like me, you'll like the Warlock late game. That's one thing I know. And the Warlock guide is coming shortly, and also some real gameplay videos. But that is just the high level class overview. So you can know in general what they do, and then a specific guide for each of these is on the way. The Warlock very soon, and then the rest of them as I actually gain any expertise. So see you then.